Number two, Jesus didn't believe in the soul going to heaven or hell. Now, again, what struck me was, wow, you're awfully confident of this. Your concept of how we know what Jesus taught is utterly insufficient to give you the certainty that you are expressing. But yeah, Jesus didn't believe in the soul going to heaven or hell. Wow. When we try to say that Jesus taught about his own deity or something like that, we can't know that, but we can know he didn't believe in this. Why? Well, because he was like any Jewish person of his day. But even then, you get to be very selective about what information about Tannaitic Judaism, Second Temple Judaism, you're going to get to choose and put together. That's what liberalism is, which is why liberals write so many books, because they can write books because they can just put stuff together. It's tinker-toy theology. It's tinker-toy theology. So Jesus didn't believe in the soul going to heaven or hell. And if you're thinking about verses, they just don't get to make the cut. And who are you to tell the great Bart Ehrman that they need to make the cut? Jesus did not teach hell as a place of eternal torment. So, notice again, what you have here is, in his mind, there is no apostolic interpretation of Jesus' words. So, everything has to be in the Gospels, but obviously for them, even that's not sufficient. But the point is, you can't take what's back here in Hebrews, or back here in Revelation, or up here in Romans, and connect it in any way to even what is accepted as being possibly a part of the early Jesus tradition. Can't do any of that. That's why there's no Christian theology. So he's doing anti-Christian theology, having laid the foundation of saying there's no way to do actual Christian theology. So that's how this functions. And so you can look at Matthew 25:46, and it's not even a matter of interpreting that in light of Old Testament concepts, God's law, justice, judgment, creative purposes. You don't have any of that. Throw that out. So now you've got the New Testament by itself, but it's all just a bunch of disjointed stuff. And we don't know who wrote this, don't know who wrote that. And so you can't connect any of it together. And so it's easy to, come up with this kind of stuff. And then number 4, the ideas of heaven and hell originally came from Greek philosophers. And so there is no question that the medieval concepts seen in Dante are more Greek than biblical. If you've got a picture of the devil running around with pitchfork and pointy tail and all the rest of this, horns and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Is it true that most Christians hold views of heaven and hell that have next to nothing to do with Scripture itself? Yep. No question about it. No question about it. I agree. Is that dangerous? Yeah, it's dangerous because it's not all that difficult to debunk that kind of stuff. And so you end up throwing all the baby out with the bathwater once you discover that much of what you believed is traditional. And I have been arguing for a few decades now that it is vitally important to place eschatology proper, which is what this is about. Christ returns, Christ judges, the basis of judgment, the nature of judgment, to base that upon what the Bible teaches about man as a whole. Because for some reason, a large majority of Christians abandon a biblical anthropology as soon as you get to this subject. So how many times you heard the argument? I certainly did. It's still an argument that carries a lot of weight with a lot of people. How can God eternally punish someone for sins committed in time? It was a limited amount of time. If you've got a 20-year-old guy who's only had a certain amount of time to commit sin in the first place, how can he be punished eternally for stuff that took place for a very short period of time? And a lot of people, I'm sure that that's a conversation that has been had over and over again in numerous Bible studies all over the place. The problem is there's a massive presupposition that has been smuggled in without anyone even noticing it. And it's a part of almost all discussions of this topic that shouldn't be able to be smuggled in if we have a truly robust biblical anthropology, doctrine of man. And that is, there is an assumption. And the assumption is that we stop sinning when we die. Why do you think that? What in Scripture gives you a reason to think that as soon as a person dies, God sanctifies them? Makes them at least morally neutral, say stop sinning. But there is no morally neutral. So if you stop sinning, then what are you doing? You're doing good. So God sanctifies the rebel? Gives them a new heart when they die? Upon what basis do we say this? You see, the reality is that there's restraint upon the sinner in this life. But upon death, what if that restraint is removed? What's the result going to be? More sin or less sin? And unless there is some kind of regeneration, sanctification, something, then it's not a matter of being punished for what you did over 10 years. The punishment is related to what you are now in your continued rebellion, which is, at least the annihilationists can say, yeah, that's why God has to annihilate you. The problem is they say he annihilates you after a certain point of time. There still seems to be a problem here because the sin is still ongoing. There's never a dealing with that. But they recognize you can't have people existing for a tremendously long period of time without them being somehow kept from sinning, because then the sin debt just gets piled higher and higher. And so if you have a wimpy, well, sorry, my Arminian friends, if you have wimpy Arminian anthropology, you're going to have a real tough time with dealing with the issue of punishment. And that's why Arminianism has so often led directly into universalism, or at least forms of conditionalism, annihilationism, and inclusivism, post-mortem evangelism, the idea that there's once you die and go, whoa, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get it. It's okay. Then this is what you need to do to get saved. I accept, and boom, everybody's going to get saved. That's almost always part of universalism and where that goes. So yeah, but how many people have a truly robust anthropology? How many people are ever pressed to see the necessary connections between their doctrine of man, if they have a doctrine of man, and the doctrine of last things in judgment? Something to think about. And finally, when it comes to the afterlife, Jesus and Socrates have something in common, and that was where they tried to do some sort of a positive thing that of conditionalism. They're all either going to be sort of blissful or just wiped out type of thing. I'm not sure. I was really thinking about playing some. I only saw it this morning, so maybe if I'd had time to get some time indexes up on it, I'm going to be pulling it down. Some time indexes or something that would have been. So I'm pulling it down, so we need to take it off screen. Then maybe I would have played some portions of it or something. I don't know. But it just struck me that, wow, Bart really was making incredibly firm, sure statements after having spent the last 20 years, 30 years, destroying any foundation for being able to make those statements. That is